Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon, wherever you are in the world, and welcome. Welcome to the Infinite Way, where spirituality meets humanity. This podcast explores the transformative power of self awareness and healing. I'm your host, Dr. Enolia Foti, today, and we're joined by Isla Stone, a holistic counselor, Reiki master, and author of The Art of Determination. Isla has dedicated herself to raising awareness about child sexual abuse and its long term impact on survivors. Her philosophy centers on the belief that increased self awareness and understanding of our interactions with the world can lead to profound personal growth and healing. Drawing from her own experiences with child sexual abuse and the challenges that followed, including addictions and destructive relationships, Isla has found a new voice and purpose. She now offers holistic counseling, Reiki, personal development courses, and workshops, and shares her insights through social media. Join us as we explore Isla's journey and her mission to support and uplift survivors. Welcome, Isla.
Thank you so much, Enolia. Thank you.
We're really excited to have you here, and I want you to know that your smile just brightens up the room. I just love your smile.
Thank you. You've also got a beautiful smile.
Thank you. Thank you. So, why focus on child sexual abuse? What is the what was it in your heart that just said that you need to bring awareness to this?
So it's a bit of a long story, but let me give you a brief summary. I was sexually abused when I was 4 years old by a family member. And then I was sexually abused again between the ages of 11 up into early adulthood by another family member. And having experienced this, I didn't realize the impact that it had on me and my patterning, the difficulties I struggled with living life, and I struggled with myself, and I had a lot of self-destructive behavior. So last year, I went through a very transformative experience where uh, there were a lot of different things that happened one after the other. And one of those things was the one family member who molested me when I was 4 years old phoned me. And prior to this, I hadn't spoken to him over 30 years. I hadn't seen him. I hadn't had any contact with him. And when he phoned me, I was obviously re-traumatized. He wanted to meet with me, but I never met with him. And it became apparent to me after that particular incident last year that one of the things that I was sort of beating around the bush about in terms of my own personal healing was the sexual abuse, because there was so much guilt and shame attached to those experiences. And because it happened when I was so young, it sort of integrated into my personality, and it was a lot harder to identify. I attributed a lot of those things to trauma, to other things that happened in my life, because I did grow up with a narcissist. And then when I had a look at these patterns, I realized that every single pattern that I was struggling with was as a result of child sexual abuse. And I'd been in therapy for many years, over 8 years. I went to see a therapist. I've done personal development courses. I've done a lot of work on myself on the spiritual level as well as the emotional level and mental level. But I never truly was able to grasp the impact that that experience had on me as an adult.
Wow. So there's a couple of ways that I want to question this. And I want to start off with the abuser, and then I want to come back to you as the child. But is this, in terms of an abuser, just any abuser, is this a recognition of predatory behaviors that that we need to be able to acknowledge or identify? I mean, is there something that flags? Because I know that even children, even as an adult, maybe you can sense it. You can sense that something's off, something's wrong. But is there a
Mm.
predatory behavior that we should be looking for, recognizing as parents or as another person just with her friends or whatever the case may be?
I think the most important thing is to watch one's intuition. And when you do feel that there's something not right, something that feels uncomfortable, something that sort of there's normally like a red light, and you know there's this feeling, but you're not entirely sure what it is. And what we tend to do, because we're nice and we want to be kind, we negate those intuitive feelings that come up. Now, for me personally, when it happened to me when I was 4 years old, I wasn't aware of any of that intuitive related feelings. I was led by someone that I trusted because he was older than me. He was 18, I was 4. He was an authority figure in the home. And I think this is the difficult part about child sexual abuse, is that very often this happens in families in terms of incest. There
Mm-hmm.
is a big issue in the world with this problem. And I don't know what we're missing in society or why this is such a big problem, but there is a missing link or something that needs to be identified when it comes to incest or interfamilial sort of issues. Child sexual abuse doesn't happen in a vacuum. So
Mm-hmm.
if I look at my mom, she had a difficult time identifying which men were good for her. So her choices in men were always bad. And
Mm-hmm.
because she was a single parent and she brought in these men, eventually one of these men became a perpetrator. So there's uh, so many different, how would I put this? There are so many different facets to this issue because it's familial, right? It's
Right.
people that you trust. And what sometimes the information isn't available. So I know that the first perpetrator was a victim, and it passes on generationally. Not all men become perpetrators, not all women become perpetrators. Some externalize it, some internalize it. But it's is a it depends on the individual about on how they deal with it.
So I understand that a lot of times when we're dealing with abuse, it's generational, it's multi-generational. Is that the same on the abuser side, that it's multi-generational? That either the person who is the predator learned the predatory nature by observance, by experience, by whatever the case may be. Are we talking multi-generational on both sides? And how do we break the cycle of this?
I suspect it might be multi-generational. Like I say, I don't think it happens in a vacuum. And any
Right.
person who externalizes their pain and hurts someone else in the way that they were harmed, whether that is in a different way or in the same way,
Mm-hmm.
they have to deal with their pain in a different way, right? They can't deal with the pain by perpetrating or continuing the cycles. So what I am working on at this point is a child sexual abuse awareness program for schools, which has a two-pronged approach, where we look at parents and we educate parents about preventative measures and awareness as well. And then for children to become aware and to build self-esteem and to become more assertive when it comes to protecting themselves from people who might be dangerous. The difficulty
Okay.
with child sexual abuse is that once you've experienced it the first time, re-victimization occurs a lot easier because it has an impact on the brain. And what tends to happen is a child will then not be able to gauge what is safe and what is not.
Right, right. So, this abuse takes place, and the first thing that I think about is the fact that as a child, you're either going to be dismissed or somebody's going to listen to you. And what happened in your case? Were you able to identify this person and your parents take action? Or was it one of those scenarios where it was dismissed or you didn't have the opportunity to say anything?
So, in the first instance, when it happened the first time, I did speak to my mom when I hit puberty, and I identified that this was something that was wrong that happened to me. And she was very supportive. She was very
Good.
open. She gave me a lot of support. She was, I went to therapy, and that experience was very positive for me. However, the second time it happened, when I opened up to her, and what had happened was I actually repressed the memories of the sexual abuse because it happened
Mhm.
so frequently, and because I knew that if I said anything, our whole lives would implode, because our lives would have imploded if I had said something. So I quite literally put it all into the back of my mind, and I regressed. Not regressed, I repressed those memories. So I experienced a lot of addiction issues in my early 20s, running away from pain that I could not identify. And when I sobered up at 27, the following year, I had all these repressed memories come back. And it was like a horse that hit me in my forehead. It was just all these memories coming back,
Right.
and I was re traumatized. I had PTSD for about 3 months where I couldn't really do anything. I was non functional. Luckily, I had a lot of support, but I did go and speak to my mom about it. And when I opened up to her about it, she actually turned on me and said, well, this has happened to you before, so how could you let it happen again? So she believed me, but then she blamed me.
Yeah.
And those
And
are two very paradoxical experiences. She was very hard on me for not having said anything.
it's really a balancing act because I have two boys, and sexual abuse, whether it's a boy or a girl, you have to be careful all the time. And
Yes.
one of the things that my mom, because I believe she was a nurse, had always taught me, she taught me that there is a very delicate balance in terms of having your children adhere to every authoritative figure. And she always
Mm.
imparted upon me that, you know, yes, your children are supposed to be respectful, but I've always imparted on my boys that if they ever felt that they were being disrespected, if they ever felt that somebody had crossed the line or they didn't feel safe, if they didn't feel
Mm.
safe, they had my full backing and support to to lash out the way they feel that they needed to lash out. And then at
Yes.
home, that they would never get in trouble. I would always listen to the story and understand what took place, and that was just a bond between our children and ourselves as parents, because sometimes what happens is that the children believe, and like you said, if I'm going to get blamed, if I'm going to get in trouble, well, I guess I got to let this take place because I don't want to get yelled at home. And I always try to impress upon our boys that you don't have to worry about ever getting in trouble. You be safe first, you take care first, and then we'll deal with after the fact. If you were in fact wrong, we'll deal with that after the fact, but you will always be listened to, you will always be heard. And denying anyone, not even just a child, but anyone, the right to be heard, and to be able to speak. I think that we've gotten so far into the fact that children have to adhere to everything respectfully, so much so that
Mm.
we've lost the balance. We've lost the balance of,
Um,
of respect along with safety, respect, and,
Yes.
and unless safety is a factor. And as soon as you feel threatened, you don't ever have to be kind and you don't ever have to be nice. And as a coach, and I'm sure you can attest to this too, there are times when we're not supposed to be nice. And
Mm.
actually that's what's counted on, is that if somebody imparts a feeling or projects something onto you and you're like, oh well, I just wanted to be nice, you have to be able to say, no, stop, you just crossed the line, period. I don't care who you are. I don't care who you are. Stop. That was rude,
I
or I don't
love
have to
what
be,
you're saying. I love
you
what you're
know
saying. Yes. It's so important
and
to give your children that support.
it really, really is. And we as women and we as adults have to learn this.
Mm.
Because if I project onto you, well, Isla, I don't like such and such a thing, you need to be able to be strong enough to say, well, that's your problem, right?
Mm.
But a lot of us, oh, well, I don't want confrontation, so just go ahead. And
Just keep
that's
quiet, stonewall, avoid.
yes, yes,
I think
yes,
it's important for us to know our values. I think a lot of people struggle to identify what is important to them, what are their needs and what are their values. It sort of starts at those really basic things. And when you can identify your values, you're able to say, no, I don't want to do this thing that you've asked me to do because I'm actually going to be more resentful than anything else.
exactly, exactly.
Can I go back
Yes,
quickly to you were saying about kids feeling safe and opening up? So I opened up to my mom around the first year that we were living with this man. When we lived there for 1 year because he was busy grooming me. And when I opened up to my mom and said to her, I felt uncomfortable because he hadn't touched me inappropriately yet. He was grooming me to do it at the end. And when I opened up to her, because I thought I had this wonderful open relationship with her, she said to me, okay, let me speak to him. She spoke to him and then she said, no, this is just how he loves his children. He's never had girls before. And so this is how he loves them. So there, I think, is where I decided, okay, there's no way I'm going to get the help I need because my mom's didn't look at her shadow and the bad choices she was making in men. It was a very subconscious thing, I think. It wasn't intentional, but she didn't see it. And she didn't look at that red light or identify it when I opened up to her.
yeah. Well, how do we allow our children to share? Because that was your intuition. That was it. That was your
Mm.
intuition. And, your mom didn't pick up on it. It's the giving a hug and it's a little bit too long. It's the holding the hand and it's a little bit too long. I remember
Mm.
at a certain age, my mom was old school. My mother had me at 48 years old, right? So I'm sure she had seen
Okay.
her share of whatever the situation had been in life. She was not a young mother. I was a surprise. She thought she was going through menopause and she was going through and she was pregnant again. So,
Oh, wow.
with my mom having me at 48 years old, when I started to be a young lady, when I was about 7 or 8, I would say even 6, I remember her saying, you don't come out here undressed. You always come out here dressed appropriately. We have company here. You don't sit in anybody's lap. After a certain
Mm.
age, you don't do that. You sit like a young lady, sit with your legs crossed. All these rules. And
Mm.
it didn't, but now, when I look back at
She
the
protected
childhood,
you.
she protected me.
Mm.
And and I say this out loud on this podcast because parents, you got to put in rules. I think this is,
Yes.
I guess my parents were so old school because they were older.
Yes.
There was a clear guideline of how a woman was supposed to conduct herself, how a young lady is supposed to conduct herself. But it wasn't because there are men around. It was really because now that we're having this conversation, it's to protect us.
Yes.
And
But
I
it's
don't
also
see
to
that.
build a sense of self-respect and the sense of
Yeah,
self-worth, you know,
yeah,
in 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 these groups of people, because that's one of the difficult aspects of child sexual abuse is children, that happens to children who have a low self-esteem. And that's why I say it doesn't happen in a vacuum. They've experienced trauma, or they are experiencing some kind of neglect, or something's going wrong with their surroundings, not necessarily with their parents. It could be externally, like at school. You
right,
know, there's
right, right.
children will, I think children who are more vulnerable are children who have difficulty standing up for themselves or feeling like they have a place to say something.
Exactly. Exactly. And there's so many layers to this, and I'm going to peel back a couple of the layers because in self-awareness, how do you sensitize parents of this? And even if they're sensitized to this, what I heard you say is that you had to deal with it because it would have destroyed your what you and your mom and how your survival, your living survival in terms of what you had to do. And this is too much for a child to take on,
Mhm.
that because of perceived love or because of the love that they have, and the fact that a lot of times women are dependent on men instead of, sharing a life with men where they have their own independency and they have, they're working and everything. So they feel like they have a choice. I'm
Yes.
sorry, it's so hard to get all of this out, but I'm
No, but
thinking
it's
about this.
true.
And so, oh my God, the children have this have this wall that they're dealing with survival in I gotta eat, I have a roof over my head and everything else. And if I say this, that might not happen anymore because mom doesn't work or mom doesn't know how to engage in maintaining the lifestyle, and the
Mm.
dependency. So can you talk to that a little bit?
So that is one of the things that's most important to me, is to always have my financial independence, because I saw what it did to my mom being financially dependent on this man. But
Mm-hmm.
the difficult thing with that relationship was that my mom worked, and she worked very, very hard. She got involved in a business with him. And that's where it went skew. Because had she stayed with the company she had worked, she would have had that independence. But she sort of moved into this new business, and it was a very successful business. But because he was narcissistic and manipulative, he was able to pull away she had shares, and he took that away from her, and she allowed it. So she was very submissive in the relationship, where she could have been a little bit more assertive because of the consistent abuse, the emotional abuse, the mental abuse, the financial abuse. And he would consistently tell her that she was incapable, or that she was bad with money, and if you hear that often enough, that's what you become. You actually sort of play into that. She really struggled with that. So I think it also comes to choosing the men in our lives, or the relationships, let's say, because it could happen to a man the opposite way, is making sure that you feel confident enough to be independent, and you are independent, and you're living your life, and you don't need someone. Needing to be needed is very codependent. So we love interchangeably. There's unconditional love. There's a bit of a love without attachment, because we get really attached, and we want people to need us. If someone needs me, then I'm loved. But that's not love. Love is
Right.
allowing you to be free. Love is allowing you to be who you are. Love is supporting you through your own journey. It's not telling you what to do. Everyone has their journey. Love is a little bit more detached than what we live. We live love. We live love with attachment as human beings.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's shift gears and let's look at it from the healing perspective. Talk to us a little bit about what you deemed important for awareness, some of the programs that you've created and the workshops that you've created to make children aware as well as the parents.
So one of the things that I'm very focused on is addictions, right? So I do work a lot with addictions because that is the fallout for child sexual abuse. And that's sort of where my journey started on this self-healing journey myself, because I'm a recovered alcoholic for 12 years. And when I started on that journey, I realized there was a lot I didn't know about myself. So I think it is about self-awareness and creating self-awareness, being aware of your dark aspects and your positive aspects, being aware of the things that you're capable of doing if you're angry or envious or jealous, being aware of those things, because we tend to reach more to the light than we do to the dark, which is a good thing. But if we're not aware of those negative parts of us, if we're not aware of how we can shut ourselves off from the truth because we don't want to see the truth, we are in denial, then these types of things happen a lot easier in our family units. We have to be able to see the truth rather than seeing what we want to see.
Right.
So the program that I've created is not so much about alcoholism, it's more about self-awareness, learning more about ourselves, becoming more comfortable with ourselves, becoming more comfortable with identifying the things that we need to work on and working on them. Because that's what we are, we're human. Everyone wants to avoid all the negative parts of them because they are afraid that if they acknowledge those things, then that is what they become. But that's not the truth. We're human and we're going to have negative aspects and positive aspects. No one is perfect. There's no such thing as the perfect human being, you know?
Right.
So that's the
Right.
one program. It's a long-term 3-month program of personal development and working our way out of addiction into the light.
Mhm.
And then the other workshop I have is more about developing an awareness or understanding of what child sexual abuse does and how to heal. So we take the steps in healing the patterns that have been created as a result of child sexual abuse.
Okay. So, in understanding that those formalized programs take place, I would think that a fundamental part of this is giving the person the agency to really speak their truth and use their voice, because that's one of the things that has to have been suppressed. Um, Having to face the issue, because if the whole situation has been repressed, like you said, it manifests in the addiction and everything, because you're not getting to the root cause of what the actual
Mm.
pain and trauma actually is. So what happens is you dull the pain, and you dull the pain through addiction, and that pain dulls, but at some point you have to open up that wound so that that festering could eventually heal. Um, that can't happen overnight. Do
Mm.
you, when you address these in workshops and things like that, what are they? Are they like the intro to be able to go into your 3-month program? Because I would think that none of this is less than 3 months, less than 4,
Mm.
5, 6 weeks, less than, you know, a year to say, okay, I'm going to do my work. I'm really going to do my work. And as a coach, I've dealt with people that have some serious traumas and addictions. Um, and some fall along the lines of abuse. And in a world of instant gratification, many people think that you're going to come and fix them overnight. And it's like, number one, I'm not going to fix you. And number two, you have to do the work, you know? And number three,
I'm
it's
always very
not going
clear.
to happen,
Mm.
yeah, overnight. And
Mm.
what's your program address people learning to do their work and knowing that it's going to take time?
So definitely, I let people know that they're not going to heal overnight and that I'm not going to fix them. I can't go in there and change the way their neural pathways work or their thought processes or their limiting beliefs. I can't change those things for them. They have to do the work themselves. And there are exercises that they have to do throughout the program to help them become more aware. Because as far as I'm concerned, awareness is the first step. First, I need to be aware. Then I can accept, and then I can change. And I will change according to what my healing path is. Every person's path is different. So they might come to me for 3 months, then they go somewhere else. It's never, there's no magic pill. There's nothing that's going to change you overnight. You can try different things, like there's other ways of getting better, like people use psilocybin or ibogaine or psychedelic assisted therapies, but the work still needs to get done. And I just create the foundation for them to be able to do the work moving forward, because I always tell them it's a lifelong journey. You're never going to be healed like this. You know,
Right.
I'm still learning. 12 years into it, I'm still learning. Every single day, I'm learning something new about myself, about my experiences. And I can't hold their hand for 6 years while they go through the journey, or 10 years when they go through the journey. I can only create a foundation for them and help them understand what this is going to be like going forward for them. And hopefully in that 3 months, they make a lot of progress, more progress than they would have had they not come to me. But it is a long-term exercise.
So I'm sitting here thinking, you know, a lot of the times we deal with reaction. Let's talk a little bit about preparedness. What does that workshop look like that has parenting 101 in it, that prepares parents to say, here are the telltale signs, or here are the grooming that you really need to embrace and to take place to make sure that your children at least are reasonably safe. There's no such thing as 100% safe, because if you're talking family members and you're not with your child every second of every day, I mean, there's nothing that you can do. However, there are the telltale teachings of parents that aren't taking place at all today. No parenting is really taking place, and teaching people how to be parents, what to look for, what to expect, how to prepare. Are there things that we should be looking at? Are there things that we should be offering that teach people how to be parents to guard against this?
I think that when it comes to that workshop, and this is a different section in the business that I have in terms of the child sexual abuse awareness program for the kids and the parents. I think that it should be a recurring educational program over the period that children are in schools. So children of 6 will not have the same understanding as children at 12. They have a different capacity at certain ages of their lives to understand certain things. And sometimes you can't talk to a 3-year-old child about child sexual abuse. They won't understand it, right? So the idea and the concept is really to consistently have a program that adds additional information about sexual abuse and the awareness around it, how to be more autonomous in their ability to be able to make decisions for themselves when it comes to feeling uncomfortable. So teaching a child, if my body is doing this one thing in this place where I feel unsafe, then I shouldn't be here. So what does your body feel like when you're scared? Where in your body do you feel fear? How does it feel when you're uncomfortable? Teaching children how to identify what's going on with their bodies when something is happening, because they are they're not being made aware of what their bodies do, what their emotions are, how they're feeling, what these feelings mean, and what they're trying to tell them. So with a program, I would like it to be over a long period of time where you're consistently just reiterating the same things. I know this wonderful man, and what he does is he's got a NPO called Fight with Insight, and he uses boxing as a therapeutic tool. So incorporating sport for children to build a sense of self-esteem, autonomy, trusting themselves, trusting their bodies, learning about how to have respect for others. You know, there's so much therapeutic value in boxing as a discipline. and in many other sports. So getting children who are not willing to do sports to do something that will build on their self-esteem. With regards to the parents, I think it's also just identifying what the red light the red lights are, what are the dangers, what are the red flags, you
Yes.
know, and also sort of encouraging parents to become more self-aware of their own decision making and choices and who they bring into the family, who they bring into the space, you know, and what their own pitfalls are, what are their own subconscious patterns that they are not aware of. Because when we're not aware of ourselves and our decision making, then we can't inhibit or we can't stop bad things from happening to our children. Because we do play a part, not always, right? But very often, like I say, with incest, it is, there's a story that goes on in the family. No one really wants to admit it. It's okay. We keep it in the back. No one really talks about it. No one wants to talk about abuse. And if we have that conversation, we make it more comfortable we just have to talk about it, because then we become aware of what those red flags are. But no one wants to talk about it. Everyone's too scared to talk about it. It's too shameful. And there's these beliefs that parents carry that it's only that man with a trench coat taking pictures outside the school. It's not. It could be someone right in the family.
Yeah,
You
it could
know,
be Uncle Johnny
it's happening so often.
Mhm.
We haven't identified the most likely perpetrators, and the problem is that they're just part of normal society.
Exactly. First of all, I want to applaud you. I want to applaud your efforts and the fact that this is such a it's even a hard topic to talk about openly at podcasting, you know, because it's so hurtful and just feels so wrong in so many different ways that we have to even have this discussion, you know, but it's real and it's very, very true. And you're absolutely, I applaud you for being an advocate and sharing your story and being able to have this open discussion like this. And we do have to talk about it. And actually, I'm going to make a pledge to you that we have to do an open forum, a live forum, open live forum sometime, and have this conversation. It's a conversation
Thanks.
that's needed,
Yes.
a conversation that can't be hidden behind closed doors. It's a conversation that just needs to take place. Where are you based out of, so that if people want to touch base with you, connect with you, have a further discussion, or in situations that um, they're encountering, or if they just need assistance at all in wanting to work with you, how do they reach you? How do they connect with you?
So they're more than welcome to get in touch with me on my phone number. It's +2771 361 3495. So I'm based in South Africa, but I do online sessions. I have an online booking system as well. So I've got Linktree. The link will be at the bottom of the text. And I've got social media where I also tell people stories. If you want to tell your child's sexual abuse story and you want to heal from that story, you're more than welcome to send it to me. You can stay anonymous. I won't link you into any of your social media, but I think it's about talking about your hope. You know, I want people to know that we can heal, we can move on from it. So even if you feel like you haven't healed entirely, you are healing. And I want you to understand that you're not going to heal immediately, but if you are ready to open up, then you are already well on your way to getting better. I also have Instagram and Facebook, and you're more than welcome to just have a look at the link at the bottom. So get in touch. You can DM me on my social media, or you can send me a message on WhatsApp and we can make an appointment.
And Isla, one last question for you before, because I know we're coming up on an hour. But one of the things that I want to ask you is that, does this vary from country to country, or is the foundation of all of it the same? is what you're dealing with in South Africa going to be the same as what we're dealing with in America, or it's going to be what we're dealing with in Europe, is going to be what we're dealing with anywhere? I mean, I'm sitting here in Africa, and I understand what abuse looks like here from coaching and counseling here, as well as different parts of the world. But is there something fundamentally the same at a certain level, or is it different?
I really don't think it's very different. I
Okay.
think it's quite similar, other than I think maybe in South Africa it happens a lot more. Not a lot more, but it is a huge problem in South Africa because we have these movements around gender-based violence and men's violence on women. In South Africa, we've got a lot of issues around that, with femicide and just terrible things happening here. I think it has to do with parents teaching their children as well. You know, mothers being good mothers to boys, teaching them respect, and families as well, fathers being present in families. You know, fathers being around for boys to go to them and getting the guidance that they need, or mentorships. You know, having an older man guide you through your life. In terms of the different countries, maybe there is slight variations, because I do think that poverty might play a big part in it as well. When people are drinking and alcoholism is rife and money is low and people are really financially struggling, they don't have enough time, they don't have enough resources to look after themselves or to identify why they are struggling so much. So there is a lot more violence in poverty-stricken areas, in places where there isn't a lot of money or resources. I think most of it, though, when you look at, it doesn't just happen in poverty-stricken areas. It happens everywhere. I came from a home that was very well off. There was money. I know a lot of people who have who's experienced it from homes that have a lot of money. So it's not about whether or not you have money. You know, I think it's about intergenerational cycles, and you can't escape that, you know. So I don't, like I say, I don't think it's very different in different areas. Also, I mean, if you look at places like Korea, they don't have as much support or mental health support as places like, even in South Africa, we've got more support than what they get in certain aspects, you know. So I think the treatments are different in different parts of the world, but I don't necessarily think the number of times it happens is very different in the world.
You've educated us a lot. Thank you so much for your heartfelt wisdom on this topic. Again, if there is anybody out there that you deem that this episode could help, please share this episode. Let people know that we are having conversations on this topic. It's really, really important. Isla, I just want to thank you for all that you contribute to humanity, all that you do, your programs and everything. I want to encourage our audience to reach out to you. Please, please, please have the conversation. Do not be afraid to have the conversation. It starts there. It starts with being seen and not being afraid to be seen. What you have to say is important. And it is important to listen. Listen, 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 parents. Do not shut down. Your child is saying something for a reason. And a lot of times we are wrapped up in our world and we're dismissive and we're busy, or we're preoccupied. Take a moment, listen what's being said to you. Take a moment to check into what your child's doing, who they're with. Pop up, be a surprise, you know. Surprise them where you are and just say, hey, I just wanted to see how you're doing, what you're up to, and just make sure that everything's going well for you. You know, don't be afraid to assert yourself as the authority figure, because the only person and the only thing that a child has between their safety and anything is you as the parent. Your thoughts, Isla?
I completely agree with you, Leah. I think parents, that is the first step, is ensuring that you are a solid, safe parent for children to be able to open up to and to listen, to be, don't just hear, listen to what your children are saying, because they have so much wisdom, even though we don't realize it. Children can be difficult and they can throw their temper tantrums and be exhausting, but at the same time, children have their wisdom and they do know intuitively when things are going in the wrong direction. So please do be aware of what your children are saying and take action.
Yeah. And then one of the things I was sitting here thinking about too is that, in support groups, there might need to be a support group for mothers whose children have identified it. Never thought about
Mm.
the mother whose child identified the problem and then they want to get out, but they don't know how to
Wow.
leave the relationship because they can't support themselves. So that's something we can talk about after the podcast.
Yes,
Yes.
for sure. That's a wonderful idea. I love it.
Yeah. Birth from
I love
our conversation right here. So thank you,
it.
everyone. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. And thank you so much, Isla, for your wisdom.
Leah, thank you. You're just amazing. I just have to tell you, I absolutely love you. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast.
Oh, what a pleasure and what an honor. So if you like this episode, please like us. Please subscribe to us. If you know someone who needs to hear about this conversation, please share us. And I welcome you to reach out to Isla Stone. And I wanted to just say that this has been another episode of The Infinite Way, where spirituality meets humanity. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you soon. Take care for now. Bye.
Thank you, Enolia.